We're a week into free agency, and the Minnesota Vikings are still in the news. Aaron Rodgers, Ed Ingram, Garrett Bradbury, Harrison Smith. Boy, is there a lot to talk about and catch up on. Where are they? Where are they going? And what does this mean for the draft? Let's have a little Saturday afternoon fun here in the Real Forno Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by the one and only Tyler Forness. A to Z Sports sought him out to be their Minnesota Vikings reporter and NFL analyst. And he's a proud contributor over at SKOL North's Purple Daily. Tyler is also the captivating host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a special Saturday afternoon edition of the Real Forno Show. I'm your host, Tyler Forness. With me, as always, up in the top left corner, he's producer Dave. And sweet little Marzipan is playing with her dog toy right below me. Odie is hanging out on the main level. Dave, we got a lot to talk about, and I think we should start with some Aaron Rodgers stuff. Look, this is not going away, and it's very weird. So I want to parse this out. NFL Network and ESPN have been pretty steadfast about the fact that Aaron Rodgers is going to choose between the Giants and the Steelers. The Athletic, Diana Rossini and Mike Silver have been steadfast about the Vikings having conversations. The Beat has not stopped those rumors from coming out or turned them down. But what they have said is we believe that they are having those conversations. And to me, that's very interesting. One, why weren't these conversations had at, before, and during the combine? Like, it was known that Rodgers was going to be a free agent. Why weren't these conversations already settled by now? That is very weird to me, because this is an incredibly thoughtful and meticulous regime. They focus explicitly on making sure that they're making the correct decisions. They don't make rash ones. They don't do anything quickly. They are incredibly meticulous. So the fact that the Vikings are still having these conversations, to me, feels very, very weird, Dave. It floors me that this reporting keeps coming out, and I'm not even saying it's incorrect. Like, Diana Rossini has a lot of respect, and if she says something, we need to take it seriously. It's just very, very interesting that it's only coming from the one sector, and we're not hearing it from other sectors, because usually somebody like Tom Pelissero, and the reason why I bring up Pelissero specifically, he lives in Plymouth. He's from here. He used to be on the Vikings beat for SKOL North when they were the AM 1500 radio station. He's one of us. So usually he gets this kind of stuff. And Pelissero is one of the more respected people in the entire industry. Why is it just Rossini? Why is it the Athletic? Why isn't anybody else national coming with this? And it's like, I think these questions are very interesting to this whole conversation. And we can talk about Rodgers, the player, and we'll do that. I wrote a piece yesterday about how it's completely different from the Brett Favre situation. But that reporting element where it is only Rossini and Silver from the Athletic, to me, raises more questions rather than giving us answers. And that's not to say that they're wrong. It's just very interesting. We're only getting it from the one section.
Oh, wholeheartedly that it's just coming from that side. Now, I'm reading where Aaron Rodgers is wanting a long-term contract, a big dollar one, and Vikings aren't going to do that. That makes no sense. Why would they do that? It
doesn't make sense. I know. And so there is a long piece that literally just came out from the Athletic, and it's got Rossini, it's got Alec Lewis, it's got Mike Silver. Now, Alec Lewis is in there because he's obviously on the Vikings beat for the Athletic. And then you have Silver and Rossini, who have been doing all the reporting on this for the Athletic. So this was clipped for me by one of my coworkers from the article. And this kind of gives a summation of the whole thing. The general assessment of Rodgers by Minnesota's talent evaluators and coaches is that he remains a highly skilled passer who can still perform at a high level from the pocket, given the right supporting cast. Importantly, all parties believe that O'Connell is the decision maker best equipped to know and understand what McCarthy's mindset is and how the young quarterback might react to Rodgers' presence. O'Connell is also the person whose day-to-day reality would be most affected by such a move. Now, I have not read the whole piece, and I will read the whole piece, but I do find it interesting as we kind of parse some of this out that we're having these conversations, and it's incredibly frustrating. Like, I don't think if you sign Rodgers, that has anything really to do with JJ McCarthy. Well, I mean, it does, but it doesn't believe they don't believe in him. It's more that, hey, I think that this guy can help us win right now, and McCarthy is still the future of the franchise. Like, Rodgers sat for 3 years. Jordan Love sat for 3 years. Like, guys sit, and it's okay. It's not a death sentence. Some guys can start right away and thrive. Some guys thrive because they sat. So I don't really see that as this really big.
Yeah, but which one is JJ?
And you know what? That's what I said the entire process in the offseason. That's what I said leading up to the draft. Some guys can handle starting right away and handle the failure mentally. Some guys can't. You have to figure out what JJ is. I can't figure out what he is because I don't spend time with him. From the outside looking in, he feels like the guy that can handle those kind of things based on his time at Michigan, based on like how he's conducted himself publicly. The Vikings have also really controlled him publicly. He has not done a lot of media appearances. He's done like the Rich Eisen show, but Rich Eisen is a Michigan grad. So there's a level of camaraderie there that there wouldn't be with somebody else. Like if you were to come on my show, there's no camaraderie there. I've never met him and I've never talked to him. I have no connection to JJ McCarthy other than I cover the Minnesota Vikings and I've been a fan my entire life.
But we extend an open invitation. If he wants to come on the Real Forno Show or any Vikings First and SKOL show, he's got an open invitation.
Of course. But they all do. There's an open invitation to all Vikings players. But it's just very interesting when you're having that conversation where when you're talking about McCarthy, I think he'd be fine. But if Kevin O'Connell can sit back and truly say, hey, Aaron Rodgers wins us a Super Bowl this year, I can disagree with that. But I also think that it would be a smart move to trust Kevin O'Connell. The guy knows more about quarterbacks than I know about any subject. And he knows how to help players. He knows how to elevate them to another level. And
yeah, but is he the final decision maker?
No, that'd be Kwesi adofo-mensah. But I do believe if Kevin O'Connell, well, ownership obviously has to sign up on everything. But I will say the history of Vikings ownership is the Vikings want to do something that they get to do it. This isn't the Carolina Panthers who David Tepper said, no, you're taking Bryce Young when the building wanted CJ Stroud. This isn't one of those situations. Now, you're obviously going to have ownership. Hey, we would like to see this direction, but they will keep an open mind and be like, hey, you believe this is the right path? Okay. But at the end of the day, it's their jobs on the line. And I know it's the Wolves franchise, but the Wolves will still be here after Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi adofo-mensah leave because, look, unless they're going to be Bill Belichick, they're going to be gone within 10, 15 years. That's just the reality of what the National Football League is. You don't necessarily wear out your welcome. You just kind of wear out. It happens. That's okay. Like, that's just what football is. But if O'Connell wants him, I think they'll find a way to get it done. But the question is, why would O'Connell want him? And the reporting here is really interesting. As I said, I have not read the whole piece. Go to see The Athletic. You can read it. It breaks down a lot of different elements. It's so fascinating because why in the world would they still believe he's this high level passer given the right supporting cast? That dude had a really good supporting cast last year, had a better running back than anybody in the Vikings roster in Breece Hall, had Devontae Adams, had Garrett Wilson, and they still couldn't do anything. The offensive line was pretty solid for the most part. They weren't flawless, but they were solid. Why is anything going to be different with the Vikings? The Vikings have a better overall supporting cast, but the Jets were a disaster, and Rodgers was a big part of that. And I don't want to look at raw numbers, like passing yards, passing touchdowns. Who cares? We are in 2025. We have better information than those numbers. Rodgers was not good last year. He had stretches of abysmal quarterback play.
Didn't Sam Darnold play better than he did last year? If you look at the box score stats,
he did, and the metrics too. Sam Darnold was the best deep ball passer in the National Football League last year, bar none. The best deep ball passer, but deep ball I mean 20+ yards. It's like when you talk about Aaron Rodgers, this is not 2020 Aaron Rodgers, that one most valuable player. If we were getting that Aaron Rodgers, okay. I don't like the guy. I think he's kind of a nut job. How he presents himself publicly is negative PR for your franchise. But the counter argument here, Dave, is, you know what? The guy's so talented. Okay, it's fine. Whatever. I'll deal with it because the talent is there. And that's how it's always been in the NFL. If the talent is there, you deal with the personality.
How long ago was it that he won a Super Bowl?
It would have been the 2010 season, because I remember I just turned 21 and I was at a Super Bowl party and there was a lot of beer. One of my buddies was a Packers fan. He stripped down to his boxers and started to run around the neighborhood in like 10 below weather in Fargo. It was hilarious. He was very happy.
14 years ago.
Yeah. He kind of had the Brett Favre arc where he won the early Super Bowl, but then never could get to that level and win it again. So
Favre made it to 2.
Back to back, yeah. And he was the most valuable player both of those years. So I do find that element very, very interesting. But I don't think he's a positive difference maker. I think you roll with McCarthy. I think that's a smart move. Now, if this was Rodgers 3 years ago, like I said, I'd be in. But this is where people lose me when you talk about the Brett Favre angle, Dave, as we have 200 people in here. Thank you guys so much. Please like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell in the top corner. Dave and I are going to try and do this kind of stuff more often when it warrants, because you know what? People want to talk about this. People want to listen. It's a Saturday at 12:45, and we're having this much fun. It's great. This is so different from the Brett Favre situation. Most of the people in the chat, kind of looking at our metrics, you guys all remember the 2009 situation. Tavares Jackson and Sage Rosenfels were dog water in training camp. They were bad. The Vikings begged Brett Favre to come out of retirement. They gave him $1 million a game. Brett Favre came out, took about 3 weeks, and the Greg Lewis pass happened, and the rest is history. It was a beautiful season that unfortunately ended because Brett Favre was Brett Favre. And he threw the pass.
And Adrian Peterson was Adrian Peterson, and Chili was Chili. And it was, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there is so many different factors here to the whole conversation. But let me tell you, it's different. The Vikings aren't desperate. They could just start J.J. McCarthy, and they're fine. And if you just start J.J. McCarthy, who cares?
Which leads us to, would you like to see backup J.J. McCarthy? What veteran?
I don't care. Honestly, any veteran at this point, like that's out there, they're all kind of the same. They all have talent. They all have starting experience. They've all failed in multiple spots. I don't really care. Maybe Carson Wentz is probably the one I'd prefer. Former top 10 pick, had a lot of success early, and then it cratered on him, and then he lost the job to Jalen Hurts. I think that element could really help mentally help out JJ McCarthy try to figure out his way. And hey, if you struggle, you don't have to deal with some of the stuff I did, because I didn't have a second round pick behind me like Wentz did. So that would probably be the route I'd prefer. But at this point, who cares? If that guy plays, it's going to suck anyways. Like, that's why I kind of almost wish Mullins was back, because Mullins, you know what? He threw 400 yards and 2 touchdowns a game, but he threw 2 of the worst interceptions you'll ever see. But you know what? Those games were fun. They were entertaining. I knew that the Vikings were going to move the ball and they had a chance. Just, okay, will Mullins screw up? That was always the question. Will Mullins screw up? And I could live with that screw up because there was always a lot of fun. There was always a lot of enjoyment watching those. But really, I don't care. It does not matter that much. I think the path you were going to go down, Dave, is O'Connell elevated Josh Dobbs. He elevated Jaron Hall, the Packers game notwithstanding. He elevated Nick Mullins. He elevated Kirk Cousins. He elevated Sam Darnold. He'll just elevate anyway. Sure. But even so, I don't think we're going to win a bunch of games with that backup quarterback, because the difference between like the backups we have now and Darnold had stretches of really good play, and it felt more like untapped potential, which Kevin O'Connell tapped into, than this guy's just a bad backup. Mm-hmm. So whoever that backup is, just get a guy who's going to help McCarthy. That's
I'd like Cooper Rush, personally. He won games with Dallas. He had a winning record. And that's coming in for Dak Prescott. So that's my preferred favorite, but Flacco would be cool. Or we even saw today, who was it? Ryan Tannehill. Now, what would be the advantage of Ryan Tannehill coming in?
No, it wouldn't cost a compensatory formula. He would be free in that sense. I find it interesting that Tannehill, who did not play last year, but like I said, it really doesn't matter. Just help McCarthy, help him grow. And if the backup has to play, that doesn't matter anyways.
Mm-hmm. So and the reason for Tannehill is he's got the same agent as JJ McCarthy.
Mm-hmm. So a little bit of breaking news here. Kirk Cousins is going to be on the roster for the Falcons, and he's going to get that $10 million bonus for next year, fully guaranteed. So the Falcons are holding on to Kirky boy. Very interesting decision making here,
despite how much he misses Minnesota.
Bringing him back here would be an awful idea, because we're only 2 years removed from him playing really, really good football in this town. I don't think it would be a good idea to bring him back, and then all of a sudden people like JJ McCarthy has a bad game, like, oh, start Kirk. No, absolutely not. Do not start Kirk Cousins.
No, we don't need to tear apart the fan base again.
Oh, good Lord. That would be atrocious, let me tell you. But yeah, the Rodgers stuff, I'll be writing about that here later today. It's just baffling. Latest, I did get a DM sent, because the Athletic, when articles come out, they'll post like little snippets. The Athletics tweet: if the Vikings cease to be an option for Rodgers, it's possible you turn down both the Steelers and Giants and instead opt for retirement.
Oh, that would piss off my buddies that cover the Steelers, because
let's do it.
The Steelers went back with a second, more lucrative offer for him that's on the table.
Man, I don't see how anybody could care about this Rodgers stuff. And
he's over 40. And I did the research, and I told you it's 35, 36 when quarterbacks play tends to degrade. And they're usually out shortly after. There's been a bunch that have tried to stick around afterwards, but they're never at their peak unless you're named Tom Brady. And he's the only unicorn, really. So, and most don't even last that long.
Dave, have you ever seen the picture of 38-year-old Tom Brady next to 38-year-old Kenny Stabler?
Oh, Stabler looks ancient.
Kenny Stabler, Dave, you are not a young man, but you look significantly younger than you are. He looks older than you at 38. It's wild. Like, there's so much difference between then and now. Like, it's fascinating to me. Absolutely fascinating. But there's a lot more here to talk about. We could talk about Aaron Rodgers more, but no, I think I'm not going to say that they are manipulating to create storylines, because I do think that there is, like, the reason why they're reporting is because there's something to report, but I do think that they're getting their money's worth out of it. Like how, like ESPN, when something happens, they will just talk about it nonstop, because people want to keep hearing about it. People want to hear about Aaron Rodgers to the Vikings, and that's why I think they keep going with it. And from a financial standpoint, who can blame them? From a me standpoint, I don't care. Stop it. Unless if it happens, I will eat crow on it. I really don't see this happening. If it would have happened, it would have been done already. Unless this has not been reported yet, so don't count it as that. But if the Vikings gave him a contract offer and you said, no, it's too little money, they're like, okay, well, it's there. You can take it if you want. And then that's kind of where things are sitting. And Rodgers is deciding, well, do I take a 1 year, $10 million deal? Maybe that's the case. I don't think it is. Look, Rodgers, you can have the vet minimum and deal with it. Salary cap, I was doing a little bit of research on that. Right now, the Minnesota Vikings on the salary cap are $32 million under the cap right now without the Harrison Smith and Justin SKOL contracts factored in. Now, SKOL was signed yesterday as a swing tackle, and he's had some experience at guard. It's a really smart signing. He's basically replaces David Questenberry, but he's significantly younger. And
how much do you think he's going to make?
It's probably like $3 million.
Oh,
I think it'll be. It's my guess. Who knows? Swing tackles are weird. David Questenberry got 2 last year. Like, he's not a super high end swing tackle, like where he'd be like the 33rd or 34th best left tackle or right tackle in the league, where he you could argue he's a starter, but like he's like a Rashad Hill level guy.
Hey, I like the signing.
Like between 1 and 2.5 million whenever he was here. They gave him some money, but it wasn't a whole lot. And I think that's where he'll be. And Harrison Smith, nobody knows his contract structure quite yet. Max value of $14 million. I believe his base is 10.125. How they're maneuvering with that, if it's roster bonus or complete just salary, we don't know. Because I think they're going to want to manipulate a little bit for salary cap purposes. But they could just eat it all now, because right now, according to Overcap, with projections, the Vikings are negative $9 million over the cap. So they're over the salary cap for 2026 with only 32 players under contract. That's going to fix itself, because the Vikings can just be like, oh, we're just going to restructure 4 guys and be like 45 million under the cap next year. And this was the year to really put things together. Next year, their biggest losses were supposed to, in free agency, were supposed to be Ed Ingram and Garrett Bradbury. Well, guess what? They're both going to be gone. And that's how we'll kind of transition here. Ed Ingram was traded to the Houston Texans for a 6th round pick. Listen, good for Ingram. He gets a fresh start. He gets an opportunity to potentially play a bunch. He's also going to play in a system where he's got some familiarity. I've always been the high man in Ingram. Look, is he great? No, but I've always contended he's better than people gave him credit for. And his losses were always looked worse than somebody like Dalton Risner. And that perception, I thought, was a big negative on his play on the field. Now, some people I know, having talked to people, they just didn't like him because of the stuff that happened when he was in high school and college. That's fine. The accusations that he dealt with, if that's why you don't like him, like, that's totally fine. I'm only talking about the football player. I always thought the football player was a little underrated. I thought he was solid. And like some of his losses where he'd give up for pressure, he'd recover and just push the guy around the quarterback, and it didn't even impact the game at all. So I always thought some of those factors were a little unfair to him, but he's going to get a chance in Houston. And the Vikings got a 6th round pick for him. Yeah, it's next year and it's not this year. But let me tell you, that's a good value for the Vikings. They get a draft pick for Ed Ingram, and they could have cut him and saved that money, but they got value. That's awesome. Now, people are wondering, well, if Ed Ingram's worth a 2026 6, Bradbury's got to be worth like a 4th or a 5th. Bradbury may not have as much of a trade market. I am not wearing black mourning for Ingram. It's funny because I'm also wearing black sweatpants, but no, I'm like good. The writing was on the wall for Ingram the second Will Fry signed. But let's talk about Bradbury, because people are like, he should have a market. Trade markets are weird. They're different player to player. And it's not like Madden where you can just set a market and this player should draw this much and you're going to be able to trade them for this much. Real markets when it comes to the NFL are completely different. And Bradbury is 30. He's got 1 year left on his deal. It's a cap hit of about $4 million for whoever acquires him. That's expensive. Plus, you can argue there's zero upside with Garrett Bradbury. You just know what you're getting. Ed Ingram's in year 4. You could talk yourself into there. Hey, if I clean this up a little bit, because Ingram's big issue has always just been consistency, and his heavyweight boxer kind of style left him open to getting whipped a little bit. and he'd have like a disastrous loss or two a game, but he'd have some reps where he'd be like, okay, this dude can play ball. So you could tell yourself, and this is what coaches do all the time. They think in their heads, and I am almost doing the crazy motion because to a point it kind of is, I can fix him. I can fix that guy. That's how coaches are wired. And that's why you need a really good front office to tell you, no, you can't fix that guy. He's not worth fixing. You're not doing it. And like the Vikings decided, you know what? It just isn't worth our time anymore. And they got Fries, who, let me tell you, after watching the film, he is not Steve Hutchinson, but we haven't had an archetype like Steve Hutchinson in almost 15 years. Will Fries just buries you. Dave, I'll have to send it to you. The film he has against Kenny Clark is so hilarious. He just whips him, just beats his ass nonstop. It's great. It's fantastic. I can't get enough of it. It's so awesome.
And people were worried. He's young. He hasn't put out that much tape. He got injured.
He did. And you know what? I was a part of that because it's like, okay, he put up some relatively solid tape in 2023. Solid, not great. But at the beginning of 2024, he was great. So, okay. He's great. Like, how much of that is going to manifest itself here? Because when you're talking about a guy like Will Fries, who has 5 games of truly great tape from last year, and then he broke his leg, just a broken tibia. How much of that is going to translate? Are we going to be able to count on that long term? I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. But I'll tell you, this is the kind of bet that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah loves to make. He loves to prioritize like an injured guy who he believes that there's a lot more upside with. And you know what? He's been right a bunch. So the best part is if Will Fries stinks, if he is just utterly ass for the Minnesota Vikings, they can get out of his deal in 2 years and only a $12 million dead cap hit. 2 years. They can get out of Ryan Kelly. So I asked Ben Gessling. I've not gotten an answer because Gessling reported that they can get out of Ryan Kelly's deal for $3.2 million in dead cap. Over the Cap has it where it's 2 separate roster bonuses, not a signing bonus. And that is the specific difference. A roster bonus hits during the year that it's given. A signing bonus is spread out. But Over the Cap has it with a $0 dead cap hit if he's cut after this year. So I was trying to get an answer because I'm like, we're seeing different reporting, can you give some clarification? I'm just asking because like Ben usually gets the correct reporting, but Over the Cap is really good at this too. And they have sources inside buildings. And I know they have them inside the Vikings because Brad Spielberger was a legal intern for the Vikings. He's got connections there. So what's the difference? But either way, $3.2 million is nothing. So if Kelly retires, they save like $9 million in cap space next year. Like the contract structurings have been so good for the Vikings. They've done such a good job. It's been great to see. And I'm really excited, Dave, to kind of see where things go with Fries and Kelly. One thing that I was looking at going into this show, and I wrote about it this morning, was I think the run game might see some changes. And we saw glimpses of it last year. We're going to do a lot less zone and a lot more duo. And with Darrisaw, we were seeing a lot more duo. But once Darrisaw got hurt, and then you had Reisner come in for Ingram. Reisner was a bad run blocker. He just was. And I still contend that watching the film that Reisner putting him in was a mistake instead of Ingram. But I digress. This was Margie, you farted. That's gross.
Scottish Bear pointed out that the Bears and the Vikings are front loading a lot of these contracts specifically they're planning for when they have to pay their rookie QBs.
The Vikings aren't front loading. That's not what they're doing.
But they're planning.
Oh, they're planning, but the Briz follows a pretty strict structure. If it's a 5-year deal, because essentially Jefferson's 4-year extension was a 5-year deal. Cheap cap hit in year 1, cheap-ish cap hit in year 2, buku years 3, 4, and 5. But once you get to year 3, if they're really good, you're already thinking about another extension. You're thinking about how you're going to maneuver. But you want to give yourself flexibility early on. Christian Darrisaw's deal is a very similar structure. And so is Will Fry's. Will Fry's, like, it's like a $6.5 million salary cap hit. Then next year is like 16, and then 21.5 the final 3 years. Like, if he's really good, you can maneuver. If he's really bad, who cares? You're just dumping him. Like, I think that they're going to do some of that here. I don't think they have to worry about a McCarthy contract right now. They're obviously planning for it. They can't sign him until after 2026 to an extension. And even then, he's going to have 2 more years. 1 year at about $5 million. And then the next year, it's going to be the 5th year option, which if he didn't make a Pro Bowl, it's going to be around like 30-ish million is my guess, maybe 35. But so much of the 5th year option determines on how well you play and what kind of accolades you get. Because if you make Pro Bowls, that's going to contribute. If you make 2 Pro Bowls, you're making like franchise tag money. If you make 1 Pro Bowl, you're making a significant raise from if you didn't. If you want to find those numbers, overthecap.com has those projections. And it's really cool to kind of see how things line up and things kind of work out that way. Looking at...
Heck, they've got incentives if you make the Super Bowl.
Yes, they do.
They'll guarantee like $20 million extra.
Mm-hmm. So the Vikings, look, if McCarthy is good, which we all believe he's going to be, they'll be fine. They'll be just fine. The other element here is, will they end up like figuring out how to maneuver with other things? Will they? What will they do? I'm kind of having a little bit of a brain fart here. I'm not going to lie. But what will they do with the rest of this cap space? They were in on Cooper Kupp. They didn't get Cooper Kupp. And I think that's okay. I think that's fine that they didn't get him. I think it would have been great. I think that there are still some other options that they can prioritize. The funniest one, Dave, is Stephon Diggs. How great would Stephon Diggs be as wide receiver 3 here?
I don't know. But they had Rondale Moore in yesterday, and when nobody's heard anything, even that he's left.
I think the Rondale Moore thing, he would just be a Brandon Powell replacement, which is fine.
Well,
the Vikings need one.
We need him.
Yeah. The Vikings need one, and they should get one. Rondale Moore is in a great spot to be that guy. I think it would be fun to have him here. A little slot guy who can take screen passes and do a bunch of different things. But at the end of the day, I don't think he's this humongous difference maker either. I think he's a good player who should be able to do a lot of different things for you. But I think signing Rondale Moore is not going to take this to Super Bowl team. I thought Cooper Kupp, that addition could have elevated this roster to like hey, we should really start thinking Super Bowl here, because now you have some great weapons. I like the idea of having like maybe a guy like Amari Cooper.
Says Moore is way better than Powell. And yeah. I agree. I fear the little tiny guys, but if he can return punts and return kicks and get separation on an occasional pass by, I'm all for it. He's a tough little dude.
Yeah. Yeah. Youth Anasia. That's a very clever wordplay. I got a chuckle out of reading that. Asked about Tyler Lockett, if he's washed. I think he's just going to end up with the Las Vegas Raiders because Pete Carroll, Geno Smith, I think that's what's going to end up happening with him. But if he'd be willing to entertain here, I'd talk about him. But I'm not going to lie. No. I'd probably pass on him. Like, I'd take like an Amari Cooper. I'd even consider Keenan Allen if he's willing to drop like 10, 15 pounds. That dude was like, you remember like Eddie Lacy, when they were like calling him Cheeseburger Lacy, or he was just so big. Keenan Allen was just way too big last year. It was almost like he was built to play tight end. I'd like him to lose a few pounds and be that slot guy. I would like an upgrade at wide receiver 3, some real competition. Will that happen? Dave, I genuinely don't know, but I hope so. can you imagine Amari Cooper's route running prowess with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison? How disgusting that could be. I know Cooper didn't necessarily gel with the Bills, and they ended up not really working out the way that you thought it was going to. But I like the idea of bringing him in. I really do. They should bring in somebody. And by bringing in somebody, that could be a really elevator for this Vikings team. Because, look, Jalen Naylor is fine. I don't think he's great. I don't think he's this elite level wide receiver 3. I think you do need to work on replacing him at some point because, look, he's going to the final year of his deal, and I don't think he's going to be a this huge difference maker either.
I agree. And you want guys that can do a little bit different things too.
Mm-hmm.
Gives KOC more options. And both KOC calling offense and B-Flow calling defense love options.
Mm-hmm. All right. Chat, we got almost 350 people in here, which is the highest total number we've ever had for a show that was not one of our NFL draft streams. Thank you guys so much for being here. Throw a few questions in the chat. At the end of the show, I'm going to answer some questions, but I want to give another update here. I have to pull up over the cap because I do think this is a really interesting part of the salary cap. So if you have questions, throw them in the chat. I will get to them. So if the Vikings want to create cap space, they do have methods of doing so. They have a lot next year, but this year they have 5 main ones. They can restructure Brian O'Neill, get around $8 million in salary cap by converting his $17.4 million base salary into a signing bonus. They could extend him as well, which I actually think would be a really good idea if they could make that happen. Edge rusher Jonathan Grenard has a $22.3 million cap hit. They could take about $17 million and convert it from base salary into signing bonus and get about almost $14 million because he has that void year onto his deal. TJ Hawkinson has a $10.9 million base salary, 3 years left on his deal. You can get about $8 million there. And then you could also extend a guy like Andrew Van Ginkel, who's got a $10.78 million base salary. You could spread that out. He's got some void years on his deal. And also Josh Oliver, $7.95 million base salary, $9.42 million salary cap hit. You can maneuver there. And I think Oliver's a guy that you should think about extending. He's only 27 or 28 years old, and he's a really good blocking tight end that has ability to catch the football, which is something you don't get from a lot of blocking tight ends. You could trust him to run up the seams. They love that little dump off to him on that play action bootleg. I like those. I like those a lot. I think that those, like, having a guy like Oliver is a really important factor for this team, and it has been for some time. I like the idea of having like this kind of flexibility because next year, Dave, oh buddy, there's a ton of flexibility. You could O'Neill, prime for extension restructure, Jonathan Grenard, TJ Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson. You could even talk about Christian Darrisaw with his $13.2 million dead cap hit. Harrison Phillips, $6.89 million. Sorry, Darrisaw, that was his base salary, not dead cap hit. Base salary for Harrison Phillips, 6.89. Javon Hargrave could be gone, and because he's got a $14.2 million base salary. Byron Murphy could be a restructure candidate. Jonathan Allen. There are things that the Vikings can do. And even though their salary cap situation is going to be super flush next year, the whole point of this year was to get those dudes and then load up with young guys behind them with draft picks and keep developing because they're still high on a few of their defensive linemen, Levi Drake Rodriguez, Taki Taimani, Jalen Redmond. They're very high in Dallas Turner. They still believe in Mekhi Blackman, Dwight McGlothern. They're going to prioritize the younger guys next year, which is fine. You already have like maybe you go out and get one like stud next year. Maybe you find like that Cooper Kupp we talked about, where you could just come in and be a mercenary. Like that's what next year's cap would be for. So I'm not super concerned long-term about what this is looking like. But it is something to just be mindful of because next year's free agency is probably going to be a little bit of a dud, and that's okay. All right, let's get some questions here. Patrick asking, thoughts about Walter Rouse being a starting guard. I think he'll compete with Brandel. I think Brandel will end up winning, but the big thing with Blake Brandel is he was great next to Christian Darrisaw. He was not great next to Cam Robinson. That matters. That matters a lot. I do think his foot speed limitations would make him a better suited guard, but he's a very, very smart football player. And I think trying to get him involved is a good idea. Will he win? I don't think so, but it's a good idea to get him involved.
Which Brian Robertson, unfortunately, he's not going to get the big contract that we thought he would.
He still might get a sizable deal. It's very odd that he hasn't signed yet, but there's probably a good reason for it.
Yeah, the film.
Yeah, it was.
Especially those last two games.
I think Brandel was a decent part of that. Like, they were bad next to each other, where if you would have had a really good left guard, I think Cam Robinson's issues are severely minimized. I think he was almost overcompensating a little bit, and then Brandel was also overcompensating, and then both of them together, it just cratered hardcore. So I think it's a less of an indoctrination about Cam Robinson as a whole versus the situational football. Son of a Beavers. That's a good one too. We got some good screen names here in this chat, Dave. We've always had good screen names, but today especially. Any depth players you really like? O-line, D-line, tight end, wide receiver. Wide receiver, there aren't really a lot of depth guys that I like. Robert Woods is always going to be one that's going to be on the radar. Obviously, I think he played for O'Connell. He might not have. He might have been gone in Tennessee when O'Connell was there. Maybe he was there 1 year. I genuinely can't remember. But he knows the system. He knows how to block. And just being a veteran presence, I think he could be a good wide receiver 4. That would be one I would look into. There aren't really a ton of like lower market wide receiver guys that make a lot of sense. Like Noah Brown just re-signed with the Commanders. Tyler Johnson is with the Jets. I don't know. Are you going to be excited about Lil Jordan Humphrey? Probably not. Tight end has a little bit more interesting. I really like the idea of Juwan Johnson, but he went for $10 million. That just was not going to happen. I don't really see a lot of tight end guys. I actually think tight end could be a really interesting pick for the Vikings if they end up acquiring more draft capital, because they need a tight end 3. Nick Muse is gone, and they need somebody to grow and develop. Josiah DeGuara is more of an H-back. I'd like him as a tight end 3. I loved him coming out of Cincinnati. Michael Borkhardt asks, talk more about Diggs. Can we create more talk about it and make it come true? I'd love it. I would absolutely love it. Davey OG, do you think Kwesi nails the draft? Do you think he's a lock for executive of the year? No, the Vikings have to play the games first. I thought he should have been executive of the year this year. I actually don't even know if that award was ever announced, or if it went to Howie Roseman. I mean, can you blame him?
It went to Howie Roseman.
Howie's maneuvering in the draft, getting 2 like high level starters at corner that honestly fix the defense. No, like I get it, but you got to play the games too. Anthony asked about Jameis Winston or Josh Johnson. I think Johnson's already signed with a team. I think maybe it's the Giants. Jameis, like I get it, but he's so volatile with the football. How much will he help, or how much will he hurt the growth of JJ McCarthy? I think that's something here. Bradley asks, he said he's joined late, backup QB9 Aaron Rodgers. Couple guys that we mentioned, Carson Wentz. Who was the other one? Ryan Tannehill. But at this point, it really doesn't matter. T. Bass, are there any good free agent linebackers that we can still pair with Cashman? No, I don't think so. Sanborn signed. Isaiah Simmons will always be interesting. Kaiser White is an interesting one. He's almost like a bigger version of Ivan Pace, but I think he's better in coverage, and I think he's a better athlete on an overall level. So that could be an interesting one. Willie Gay has a good profile, but I don't think he's very good anymore.
Oh, we just signed Eric Wilson.
Good depth piece. Very good depth piece. And he's going to be a core special team. He's just a new Kamu Grugier. That's all Eric Wilson is.
Probably a little bit better.
Yeah. Swerve 95. Are you guys fine with the running back situation? They're going to get one in the draft. Don't be shocked if it's in round 1. Like, this could be a round 1 running back situation. I think with the potential shift to more duo kind of stuff, I think Omarion Hampton comes into play more and Caleb Johnson less because I think Caleb Johnson is massively overrated. Chieftain asked if Chetty Bridgewater is available. I don't think he is. I think he's back with the Lions, but God, that would rule. Please.
I think he's back into retirement.
Chris Thompson, assuming that JJ wasn't ready to start this year, which QB on a different team would be the best to trade for to be a legit contender that's not Rodgers? Nobody. Like, if JJ wasn't ready to start this year, they would have kept Daniel Jones and they would have told him, hey, you're going to be the guy because he's not ready. But Jones obviously saw the writing on the wall. He was in the QB room. He knows McCarthy. So I don't see that being a thing. We'll do a couple more here.
I got a few that I want to pop up.
All right. Rapid fire. Let's do them.
Tom Weiberg asks, how will Sam Darnold do in Seattle? Thoughts?
I think he'll do fine. I don't think he's going to max out what he did with the Minnesota Vikings. I don't think he's going to win 14 games, but I think he's going to make them a playoff team. They still need some work to do. It's Clint Kubiak's scheme where it's a lot of wide zone. It's they also got Cooper Kupp, which him, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, Marquez Valdes-Scantling's a really weird wide receiver room, but I think they're good enough. They have two really good running backs and Kenneth Walker III, as my text messages go off blatantly in my ear and it's loud. You can hear him?
Yes.
Oh, damn it. I'm going to have to figure out how to turn the sound off.
Next question. Anthony Tollinson. What about Jameis Winston or Josh Johnson?
I already answered that one, Dave.
Oh, missed it. T-Bass. Are there any good free agent linebackers? You answered that one. Sorry.
Yeah.
Euthanasia. Why do people want to back up QB so much? Do they not believe in ripping?
No.
I think they want somebody with more game time experience is what I think. And then finally, our own Sal Spice, who was on with Rap on Thursday night, and if you haven't seen it, go watch that. It was a great episode. Says, what a great way to ring in the Vikings first and SKOL second year anniversary. We're now into our third year of broadcasting.
Yes, that's pretty cool. And doing so with we maxed out over 360 people in the chat. It's quite impressive. Hey, help us keep our momentum going. Like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell for those notifications because, hey, we didn't even promote that we're going to go live. We just did. And you're not going to want to miss it. You're not going to want to miss any of these shows. I have a buddy downstairs, Dave. We're going to grind some film. We're going to watch some prospects. And I'm going to have to write about Mr. Aaron Rodgers again.
Well, I got to prep for 2 old bloggers tomorrow at 4:00. You're taking away from my prep time.
This is why I asked you nicely, and I gave you the opportunity to say no. But this was good stuff, and it was helpful for the fan base to kind of grasp a little bit better about the whole Aaron Rodgers thing. Look, I don't believe it. This whole Aaron Rodgers thing with it's not like Brett Favre at all. Even though, he's going to fulfill the Brett Favre prophecy. No, bite me. No, it's not the same. The Vikings aren't desperate. They're ready. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Tomorrow, everybody watch me talk Darren off the cliff. He's like free agency, but he worries about all these 30-plus-year-old players. So I'm going to walk him off the cliff tomorrow, just to let you know. Should be fun.
Good. That is a lot of fun. Chris, I'm going to come up to Fargo and I'm going to beat you. Don't say things like that. You sicko. Chris is my old roommate and he's one of my closest friends. So go away, Chris. Thank you guys. Yeah, Chris is a wonderful human. Just that joke. I'm gonna fight him for it. Thank you guys so much for joining the Real Forno Show. Over 360 of you. Still really cool. Don't forget, tomorrow, 2 old bloggers, 4 p.m. Central Time, unless Darren makes him change it last second, which then I get to make fun of Darren again, which is wonderful. From all of us here at Vikings First and SKOL, I'm Tyler. He's Dave. SKOL Vikings, everybody.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love, our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!